I wanted to follow up, Admiral Malloy, on, you were talking about the requirements overall for the size of our fleet. Well, one of the issues that I'm concerned about as we look at all the threats that we're facing and all the challenges that were certainly outlined well by Senator King is the Navy's requirement for the attack submarine fleet was actually established, as I understand it, in, I think it was around 2006. And given all the things that have changed since 2006 and the challenges that we face, and in particular, obviously, even in the Asia-Pacific region, is the Navy going to undertake establishing a new requirement for the attack submarine fleet as well? We already know that 50 to 60% of our combatant commanders' requests for the attack submarines is not being met.
Yes, ma'am. As part of that force structure assessment, is actually 9 analysis of carriers, large surface combatants, and one of those is SSNs and SSBNs as well. And clearly, the number is 48. It has been since the 2006 study. Unfortunately, and we're slightly above it right now, but based upon the decommissioning rate of the Virginia class, or the 688 class submarines, we built them at 4 or 5 a year with the tremendous support of Congress back in the 80s. We will go down to a number of 41 in 2029, and we'll stay below 48 for over 10 more years. So it's important to execute that multi-year. And one item that we've been asked by the House Armed Services Committee, and we're looking at now in next year's budget is, there's in FY21, we go to 1 Virginia because we start the first Ohio replacement.
Reading my mind.
Yes,
I
ma'am.
love this.
That is clearly, we are now looking at what are the advantages that would come from the authorization of more of those ships and that multi-year. Could we get further savings out of the hulls? That is something we'll have to come back next year. But clearly, the first submarine that fills in that divot is buying the 21 submarine. Mr. Stackley had commissioned a group, and he'll probably talk more about it, the Submarine Unified Build strategy that looked at Virginia class, Virginia payload, and Ohio replacement, and we think we'd be able to do that.
Well, Secretary Stackley, I'd certainly love your comment on that, of what Admiral Malloy just said, because this is also something that has been raised by both the chief and the vice chief have expressed a real interest in not going down to 1 Virginia-class submarine in 2021, and our ability to keep it at 2. Even with 2, you know, we have a gap, but with 1, it's not sensible.
Yes, ma'am. We've been building 2 submarines a year since 2011, and this year is actually the first year we start delivering at 2 per year. So we've got stability in the line. Admiral Malloy referred to the Submarine Unified Build strategy. 21 is a challenge year because of the high replacement. We spent a lot of time this past year working with industry, taking a look at how can we best build the Ohio replacement program so that we can leverage the best of our 2 submarine builders, Electric Boat and Newport News. And as we worked through that, what we're uncovering is opportunity and capacity across the 2 builders. So one of the challenges was capacity and imposing potential risk on the Ohio replacement. We think we have the capacity to address that. A second challenge is design associated with the Ohio replacement. We have that on track today. The third challenge then becomes cost. And so as we look at building the Virginia multi-year, and as we look at driving down costs, frankly, in the Ohio replacement program, we're finding more opportunities. So we're working this as a top priority in our 2018 budget build to be able to come back and fill in that 2021 submarine because of all the decisions going forward to mitigate the shortfall that Admiral Malloy described. That boat is the first and best mitigation effort that we can have. So it's a priority. We think we have tools available to address it as opposed to just bringing back a large bill and a lot of risk associated with it. And we look forward to continuing to work with you all in the course of this year and with next year's budget to do so.
Well, I think that's excellent, and I look forward to working with you both on that issue. I had one final question for Admiral Malloy and General Walsh. Russia has provided advanced anti-craft and anti-ship systems to Syria that pose a challenge to our most sophisticated ships and aircraft, as well as partners in the region like Israel. How has the deployment of advanced Russian systems like the S-400 anti-aircraft and the P-800 Yakan anti-ship cruise missiles changed how U.S. naval forces are operating in and around Syria? General?
Senator Ayotte, I don't know if I could specifically say, I'll defer to Admiral Malloy and how the fleet is operating right now around Syria, but I will tell you that one of the things the CNO and the Commandant has us looking at, one of the other things I do, I co-chair the Naval Board, and one of the things they asked us to do is look at how we would operate in a contested environment. So we've with Naval Development Warfare Center and Combat Development Integration Command down at Quantico, we're working together on writing a concept for littoral operations in a contested environment, which takes into across all the globe places we'd look at. One of the areas is the scenario you just talked about. And as we look at that, how those type of threats would affect fleet operations, specifically how we would conduct, whether it's a non-combatant evacuation or it would be high-end conflict, and how those threats, we have to deal with that. What we're definitely seeing is those threats impact us, and we're going to have to work much closer and integrate with the rest of the battle force. That the Amphibious Ready Group is certainly not going to have all the capabilities to be able to operate independently, and it's going to need the rest of the battle force to integrate and operate closely and work together with the high-end threats that the cruisers, destroyers bring, the carriers bring, along with the submarine force.
Yes, ma'am. A lot of the specifics would be very classified. We can come back in a separate session.
Sure.
What I can tell you is that items such as the decoys you have on board, we've done above-threshold reprograms, great support from your committee to fund NULCA jammers. So the focus the fleet has to put on is ranges and distance to the coast, where we have to be for our operations, and then the level of the ships you bring. If you have an E-2D, the Advanced Hawkeye airplane, that has the ability to link up with our cruisers, the Block 9. If that's the force you have, you can be closer or be able to survive. Other times you have to be farther away. So it's a combination we call ConOps, the ability to operate, and then the equipment you bring. But the more modern that we can bring in terms of the airplanes, more advanced Aegis build, a ship can look up for missiles and look close at water for missiles. You know, I know there's a modern ability to search both areas. One ship can defend itself and others around it better. So it's a combination of technology and operations, but it clearly, as I said, was at the very beginning, operations in the Eastern Med, the Black Sea near Russia, are as much of a threat as they are being operated near the China coast. Both of them bring a tremendous change. We need to look at, once again, the modernization we talked about to get the advanced electronics as well as the weapons to deal with it.
Thank you.
Okay, can I exhaust the topic a little bit here?
Chairman's permission.
Absolutely.
We have gone forward with deploying 4 Aegis destroyers to the Mediterranean, and part dealing with the phased adaptive approach for ballistic missile defense for Europe. In doing that, we sent over our more advanced baselines to have basically the ability to deal with both the ballistic missile threat, but also the AAW threat. As these other threats emerged, we basically prosecuted, called rapid deployment of capabilities. We went to the Naval Research Lab, and we brought their best and brightest, and they, within a cycle of a year, were able to develop a thing called the Transportable Electronic Warfare Module to specifically deal with the threat that you described. And then this past year, we followed up with installing and testing overseas what's referred to as CRAM, which is a combination of our close-in weapon system and the rolling airframe missile. So we've been able to put electronic warfare as well as self-defense capabilities on these advanced destroyers forward deployed in the Mediterranean in response to these threats as they emerge. This type of turnaround as the threat emerges, frankly, what we need to be doing every day.
Absolutely. Thank you for the information on that. And, Russia said it was being so helpful in Syria. I think we know the truth. Thanks.